growth of digitalisation on the planet is significant. We're consuming electronics at a rate of over 6% more each year, year on year.
E-waste is actually one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world because in modern life we use a lot more electronic and electrical devices. Currently, we recycle about 22% of the global e-waste generated every year.
When we look at the fact that we're producing 1 billion mobile phones a year, over 300 million laptops a year, in just those terms alone, we're draining the natural resources of the earth and we're not replenishing them. We can't replenish them.
You know, we have 347 million metric tons of e-waste lying around the floor somewhere on this planet, and that's going to grow to 746 million tons by 2030 if we don't do something about it. E-waste is toxic and it contains chemicals that are in the top 10 for public health concern. So, you know, when we burn it, we create hazardous emissions. When we're transporting it to the smelter, when we're going through the smelting process, that is costing us enormously in terms of the spent CO2 to do all of those things. And that's the biggest factor when we look at global climate change.
We need to understand what really recycling electronics means for us. We strip the metal, we strip the plastic, and we're left with the heart of the electronic component. We genuinely don't have the right solution up until now.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millions of a second speed.
Looking back to sort of like the 1950s, we have been using a very cheap substrate. People have probably seen it. It's the rigid green boards that are in a lot of the devices you'll find in your homes.
So they could be in your mobile phones, vehicles, computers, smartwatches. And these days, they're even in things like hoovers, washing machines, fridges and freezers. So we rely on them quite heavily in our lives these days.
We have traditionally been using this stuff, this green hard substrate, FR4 we call it today, and it's been around for a long time. It costs very little money to manufacture. It's hideous to make, it's hazardous to burn, and when you put it in the floor, it never breaks down. When these are manufactured and you want to do something with them when they get to the end of their useful life, it is nigh on impossible to get those components off and those components still be viable.
The process that we're looking at here is essentially the ability to be able to not waste those components, not destroy them in the same way. If you take as a good example today, such as the laptops that we use, approximately 80% of those components haven't changed in 10 years and probably won't change in the next 10 years. Obviously, memory changes, the graphics processors change, but all the basics that support that infrastructure haven't changed. And so, if you can take a laptop back, disassemble it, and now you recover those common components, they will directly feed into the next one or the next one.
The idea of having a PCBA at end of life that can be unzipped, harvested, and reutilised in a second life means that they're now valuable. If they're valuable, we have a situation where people want to recycle them, and we turn around this cost process of it's a liability to recycle electronics to it's an asset to me, this end-of-life electronics, because I can reutilise it.
We have been designing and manufacturing electronics for decades, and we first developed the reuse and recycle technologies 15 years ago, but the world just was not ready.
So the last 15 years, In2tec's been innovating technology that we frame as a reuse and recycle. Reuse is a set of conductive adhesives and processes that allow us to produce a printed circuit board assembly in the same functional opportunities and same environmental conditions that current technology printed circuit board assembly delivers upon.
The unique thing about reuse, and why we call it reuse, frankly, is that at its end of life, the chemistry of that adhesive can be reversed under very controlled circumstances, so that following that process, the components can then simply be removed from the board, literally by wiping them off or picking them off to recover the components in a very low energy, clean way. So it provides a way of being able to recover those parts in such a way that they are both clean and ready to go effectively.
The green board is a very traditional technology which we've talked about, and essentially we take that, we crush the whole thing, and we use a number of different methods to try and extract some of the metals from the product. But the reuse technology utilises conductive adhesive bonding. It utilises a number of different substrates. In this case here, it's a PET. And now we're moving to bioplastics, which allows us to compost them at end of life, so we can unzip the components using the recycle process, and we can allow the substrates to be composted in the ground in a sustainable manner.
Companies aren't generally going to do things for the betterment of the planet without there being some financial gain for shareholders and stakeholders. That's where I know that our solution provides the answers that we need. We've got opportunities for everybody. For every 10% of annually produced PCBAs, if we change those to being manufactured with reuse, it saves around 27.9 billion tonnes of CO2e. And that's going to have a massive positive effect on where we're facing with global climate change. So whether a manufacturer is looking to implement reuse and or recycle under licence, whether we provide the electronics through one of our facilities, the cost to implement is minimal, especially versus the significant benefits that you gain by having done so. You know, you've now got an asset rather than e-waste liability. There's a lot of value in that board.
And we look at electronics and go, it's probably the area that is the least well developed in terms of having solutions for recyclability. Whilst, you know, diametrically opposed to that is it's the largest waste stream that we've got on the planet. It's a problem today, but it's more of a problem for our kids and our kids' kids. You know?
If we carry on consuming at the rate that we are today, by 2030, we will need 2 planets. That's how many of our critical resources that we're taking from the Earth, and that 2 planets will have to manage our consumption, but also the absorption of our waste. We need to get back to only needing 1 planet to underpin what we need, what our children need. First and foremost, I'm a mum, right? I've got 3 kids, the youngest is 6. I want my children to be safe, happy, healthy, and for us to leave them with a planet that resembles something similar to what we experience today. Knowing that I'm a part of the paradigm shift in the electronics industry and, to the most part, leading that change, it's exciting, it's humbling, and probably a little bit surreal. But we need to change.